Hello, everyone. It's 10 Types, as I was joined by Uncommon Fossil on the Reasonably Effective podcast.
Glad to be here, and we're recording not the usual day. Not that that matters for the listeners because it'll be uploaded as usual. But I'm feeling a little out of rhythm, right? There's a certain rhythm to the week, and then it gets to that day and the time of recording where it's not then. So, maybe hopefully it's good for the podcast. Time will
Yeah.
tell.
Speaking of things being a little out of normal, I don't know if, so Pokemon TCG Live's been really wacky lately with the new trainer trial. You have not played it, right? Or, yeah, you've,
What is it actually?
so have you not heard about it?
Did it just start
No,
this
we
week?
actually mentioned it on the last podcast, but I didn't know about the thing. So,
Oh, this is the one with the 4 rare candies in the 4 switch, right?
yep, and it's an expanded, except they accidentally, or maybe intentionally, but probably not intentionally, unbanned all the banned cards, and you can play as many
Oh,
ace specs as you want. Well, it's as many ace specs as you own. You can't own more than one of the same art of an ace spec, so there's some kind of weird stuff there. And
okay.
I don't know about Radiance, but you might be able to do that as well.
Oh, I saw that there were like some funny videos looking at the thumbnails and the titles, but I didn't click on them. So has that been fixed?
I don't think
Do you
so.
know?
No, I don't think they've talked about it. So funny videos, were they by me or were they by other people as well?
Might have just been by you. So anyway, I love playing Scoop Up Net, so I can finally play Scoop Up Net, and I might just do that with like an Inteleon Arceus deck, and just enjoy that. Just scooping up my Pokemon for nothing else. So that's okay. So live is they're being live about things. I didn't know that. So
Yeah. But and then also I guess with Pocket, this isn't something we really talked about. We talked about it some. We're considering talking about it today. It's I guess the 1 year anniversary starting the Mega era in a lot or in Pocket. There's some like cool things, I guess. Nothing crazy, but some interesting stuff going on there, I guess.
yeah, well, yeah, it's 1 year. I mean, I think we should probably talk about it soon. Like they did the deluxe EX, whatever those packs were and stuff. It was just interesting what they did. So, but anyway, yeah, there's been a lot happening in Pocket too. But we're talking regular TCG, right? And we're talking what you call card category. You go
Categorization.
ahead and say it. Yeah, I can't. Whatever, the syllables don't work. But what do you mean by that term? Because it's a little weird.
Yeah, so I don't what I don't mean is card types or like fire, water, or stage, though those can play some amount of factor in it, or like supporter item or trainer or whatever, but more so what the cards do for your deck, kind of the role they serve. And you will kind of it'll make more sense when we get into it, hopefully. But you have things like gusting, for example. That might be a more specific one, or draw, or your main attacker or something like that. There is different levels of specificity that you can find with this, but ultimately, these card types are important to consider when you're building your deck. I think people don't really think about it specifically. Um, I've recently been actually seeing some videos on Magic the Gathering. I actually posted one with a special guest, but um, the in that like community or whatever, people break down the cards into different types a lot more, and that can be useful for understanding things better.
So this is part. Let me just say part of kind of how I'm thinking about it to see get us on the same page, and hopefully we're on the same page, and so our listeners can understand too. But like the drawing cards, like you can obviously there's supporters that draw. I think there's items that draw. There's energies that draw. There's attacks that will draw. There's a Pokemon with abilities that draw. Right. So like drawing. Obviously, there's distinctions among, but you can draw in all these different ways. Right. That's kind of what we're considering.
Yeah, and some of them are grouped together, some are different. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you said you had a few main categories, and I want to hear them. I'll present mine after, then we can kind of go from there.
Okay. And because I'm trying to cover like what happens for most decks, and once you get to control things, it gets really tricky. Although I also think you can kind of maybe have some of these categories as a positive and as a negative. So doing damage is one thing. There's a lot of things that modify damage. Standard take prize taking doing damage is a big deal.
Yeah, could you
Sorry.
give examples of cards as well? I assume you mean like main attackers, but would you also include Dustnor in there?
Well, I mean things that things that modify damage, right? Like
Okay.
there's so which can be tools, which I forget what they are now, but right there's
Yeah.
ones that do right. There's the one that does what 10 more damage. Obviously, there's supporters that can do more damage. Some of them are situational. Obviously, sometimes you have to and obviously there's a Pokemon with abilities that buff the damage, right? There's like the fighting Pokemon that I've been seeing in standard play some, right? That does what 30 more damage, I think, by your attacks, if
Yeah,
I'm
the
remembering things correctly.
Garganackle.
It might be. It might
I've not
be.
been seeing that, but if you,
Well, I've
I
been
actually
playing
saw
it.
it once, I think.
I also been playing more expanded, so I've been playing my Porygon Z deck and expanded. So, you see all sorts of weird stuff, including Porygon Z deck. So,
Yeah,
um,
I was like playing. Speaking of Porygon Z, this is a bit off topic. I was playing my Porygon Z Infinite Combo deck in the trainer trial and timed out, so that was unfortunate.
okay, well, at least the timer was working. So, anyway, so that kind of right, get doing more damage is a big deal. To me, the damage, like the base damage that the card says on the card text, that's not what we're considering, but it's really damage modification, right?
I mean, I'd say like
And
the main attacker. My goal is to categorize every card, so um, like I'd say
okay,
that like that's certainly a part of it, but that's kind of like the starting point, right? It's not something special necessarily.
yeah, that's true. Like, because I was thinking like attaching your one energy per turn, I was going to ignore that. And there's things that accelerate energy like Crispin, which is obviously we have to, that's a big deal too. But maybe considering the things you normally do is part of it too. So you do damage. There's things that modify damage. There's also things that reduce damage. That'd be the negative side of it. That maybe I would put under the same category. That gets a little trickier. So damage is a big deal. I think draw is a big deal because just things that draw you cards is like Pheasantipity EX's ability draws you cards. Research draws you cards. You discard your hand, so discard as well because a lot of things get combined in a lot of cases. And even with Pheasantipity, you're just drawing, but it's conditional, right? You have to have a Pokemon knocked out last turn. So there's conditions too to be met. So drawing cards is a big deal, and then searching is probably the third of the big categories to be damage, draw, search. That search is one of the things that makes Pokemon a little unique to other games. You get to search a lot for particular cards. Usually, it's restricted to a type of card. There are a few cards that let you search for a card, but searching your deck is a big deal. Although I realize, and I have a fourth category, which is acceleration. Something like Crispin does that. Obviously, you accelerate energies. You can also do things that accelerate, like Grand Tree accelerates the evolution process. So, in one sense, I would classify that as acceleration broadly. Maybe I shouldn't combine accelerating Pokemon and energies in the same category, but I think you might. To me, you kind of can do that. I get the other thing is recovery. That's actually a fifth category. I'm writing that down now. I'm adding to it because you can recover obviously like Pal Pad from the card pile to your deck and such. And I've also left out switching. Okay, so that's really important too. Recovery. One way when I was thinking recovery in a certain sense is moving from one zone of play to another. And I thought maybe you could call it moving from zones. In a certain sense, like switching is moving a Pokemon from the active zone to the bench zone. I don't know if zone's the right term. The terminology gets weird. And obviously, like recovery moves it from the discard pile to your hand, to the discard pile to your deck, discard pile onto the bench, or say to the lost zone. That's all in a sense recovery or zone changing. So damage, draw, search, acceleration, recovery, switch. Those are the categories I'm kind of thinking about starting things off.
Yeah, so my categories are unsurprisingly as we always do these, they're a little different here. So I guess 8 categories. The main category, or the first one, I guess, is going to be like the main Pokemon or main attacker. Again, with control, it gets a little weird. Also with toolbox decks, it gets a little weird in my opinion. But you have like a main build around Pokemon. The deck I looked at to like base this on was just Dragapult here. So you got Dragapult EX. And then the next category, I guess, this one's a little weird, is like the quote required stuff. This is the energy, maybe energy acceleration, rare candy, previous evolutions, the things that you need to be playing to get your Pokemon into play. It varies from deck to deck, but to like get it actually working. So yeah, that was your like acceleration category kind of, but it also includes like the literal basics like Dreepy for Draghold or whatever.
Right.
Then I have the I call it the win more synergy category or something. It's the stuff that you need to it's pretty much like your damage category kind of. It's like adding on to the thing that you're already doing. Generally that's going to be damage there. If you happen to be playing a mill deck, it could be some extra mill. It's something that is going to be adding on to what you have. I guess I'd also maybe toss in damage reduction there or like HP buffs or something. But like in Dragon Ball, it's going to be something like Dustmore, Monkey Dory, that can be another category, and also Hawlucha. And then I have
Hang on. What did you call? So you had attacker, you had required cards, and what was the third kind of
I
category?
called it
The
Win
name?
More Synergy. I don't know.
Okay.
The category name wasn't like super good. This is actually the last one I created, but yeah,
Okay.
it's like do more of the stuff you're already doing. Um, then the next category I have is tech options, like tech attackers, like secondary attackers, or like matchup specific countery stuff, I guess. I don't know. This one is also kind of rough around the edges, this category, but something like Glow's Clefairy EX against Dragapult EX, obviously important for the matchup. Kind of not meaningless outside of it, but I mean it kind of is, right? Then you have
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. Then I have the three categories that kind of encompass draw, I guess. I have consistent draw engine like onboard draw, like Pheasantipty EX, Drake could have Pidgeot EX. That's a technically search, but it's a similar idea. Lunatone. Not every deck's playing something like this, but these are generally nice to have. Unlike your what I call burst draw supporters, like Research, Iono, Lilies. I'd also probably chuck in Squawkabilly EX. It's a one-time big draw effect. It functions kind of similarly. Obviously, they're different card types, but there are some similarities there. And then specific search options like ball search cards, really like Nest Ball, Ultra Ball, Buddy Buddy Poffin, even something like Earthen Vessel or something like that. And all these cards are trying to get cards into your hand. They're doing it slightly different ways. Some are more precise, some are more universal. But you have those grouped together there. And a big thing different from yours is I feel like search and draw are pretty closely tied together. Like Pidgeot EX is
Yeah.
search, and it functions similarly to like a regular draw engine, right?
Yeah, no, search and draw are very, very closely related. They're obviously there's a distinction that's important, but yeah, they are very close. So yeah, I get
Um,
that.
then my last category here is actually pretty broad. There's a bunch of subcategories. There've kind of been actually no, there haven't really been subcategories of the other ones. This is utility. Utility as in the categories I have. I actually forgot recovery, but that would be in there. Yeah, gust, which you didn't mention. I feel like gust. It could be included with
That's
switching,
big.
but
Yeah,
and then there's Gust and switching are like the same thing, but for a different player and substantially different in how they work in the game. Then I had healing, which is like not the most common, but it is I'd say in that category. Then you
yeah,
have disruption as well. This would be hand disruption, board disruption, like Iono, Zozix Machinations, the hammers, like enhancer crushing hammer, jamming tower, things like that. Those are going to be a disruption, which again you could break down even further there. And yeah, the utility cards are generally they're also kind of situational. They kind of blend in with the tech options category I have there, but they're more like they're not like damaging attacking Pokemon. They're some unique support effect, like Latias EX there, or Badoo are Pokemon that I put in that category, I guess. Badoo's kind of a tech Pokemon as well, I guess.
okay. So you've done more of a deck. You've kind of broke it down by deck building
Yeah.
concepts, I would say more. Which I was doing the more the general things that obviously then you have to decide with your deck how you're going to do those things, what you lean into, which you have more or less. So interesting. So I'm just looking here. Some of the other things that I had that I don't know, like walling, because I've been playing Crustle and Zoroark recently. That's been my standard deck. So I'm a fun person to play against. It's an interesting deck actually.
Yeah.
But Walling's a big, obviously its own. I don't know how that fits in. Probably doesn't fit in either of our lists very well.
Yeah, I'd say
Specialty.
sorry, jumping in here. Maybe it
No, go ahead.
works with special or no, with disruption. It's
Yeah.
like not quite the same, but it's something kind of like that. Also for like it is sometimes your main option or a tech option there. Obviously it's like it's more specific than that though.
Right. I mean, there are just decks that are just walling focused. Walling is distinct though that from just adding HP, right? It's
Yeah.
rather just tankiness. It's a distinction, I would say. Special conditions, obviously, things that implement special conditions are a thing too, which I don't know that they fit very well on what we have. Things that knock a Pokemon out, right? Like Roaring Moon EX, Mill, right? Prize card manipulation, that's an important category, like a
Oh,
Sui and
yeah.
Heavy Ball that lets you get from the prize cards, but also things that let you obviously the one that's the coin flip that lets you take an extra prize card, or obviously like Dusknoir, which does damage, but it also manipulates your prize cards,
Yeah, I'd say
an area.
with prize card manipulation, like I'd
Yeah,
say you have Hisuian Heavy Ball, which is something that you look at your prize cards, you get a basic, you find there. It's not in standard. You also have Exchange Ticket.
right.
That's like a little different. Hisuian Heavy Ball is
Yeah,
almost like Search, but no, not exactly. It's Search, kind of like Night Stretcher Search, where it gets like a card, but it's a little sketchy. Obviously used for something else, but they're almost recovery cards as well. Like they're not the same, but
yeah.
they're getting it from a place that you normally couldn't get it from. On the other hand, something that's just like taking extra prizes, I'd say is like more so just supporting your game plan, which is like important, and it does interact with the prize cards and can be useful if something's stuck there, but it's still working towards your main game plan. Hitsu and Heavy Ball isn't like winning you the game or progressing you in the game in the same
No,
sense.
no, it's right because Hisuian Heavy Ball a lot of it's obviously it's a ball card. It's in the name. It's a lot like Nest Ball, Quick Ball. It gets you a basic Pokemon, but it gets you from a different zone of play, right? And obviously we did nothing we've said like addresses like say the Lost Zone mechanic, right? With cards that put things in the Lost Zone, which is obviously its own thing. Again, that's a specialized thing that they only print cards periodically that actually interact with the Lost Zone. But there's all these little weird things, but it's a matter of what are the big things. So you distinguish like your attack Pokemon versus support Pokemon, right? In
Yeah.
a dex. So like the Dragapult deck, you had the Dragapult EX was the attacker, the Dracloak and the Dreepy were support Pokemon, so to
Um,
speak.
yeah, I mean, so I had it in a few categories. I had the main Pokemon, which I'd say every deck in the game has one main build around card. It could be like obviously multiple copies, probably, but pretty much when you look on Limitless, it's the card that the deck's named after. That's not always true. I'd say it's like say or I don't even know what I'd say the main Pokemon would be for Mega Absol Box or main card. Um, I'd say in Terra Box the main Pokemon would be knocked out. But anyways, for the most part you have like some main idea, main game plan, and then you have the Dreepy, the Dracloaks. Ignoring the fact that Dracloak draws, those are going to be like you literally need to play them essentially. Versus Pokemon that are going to be like adding extra damage like Dusknoir or that are providing utility like Latias or Fezidipti being that like draw, which is very fundamental.
Yeah, now I would argue that every deck doesn't have a main card. Like I think my Crustal Zoroark deck, depending on the matchup, it's got the Zoroark, it's got some other ends, it's got the ends Reshiram. So you can go with the red ends attack. Probably Crustal's the main, but there are some decks that are more built for different ways too. So
Yeah, that's fair.
um, but yeah, I mean, because well, like a Limitless, that there's normally two cards, right, that they name after the decks. A lot of times, the one's clearly a support one. Um, Obviously, like the Gardevoir deck, I guess it's a Gardevoir, although you don't usually attack with Gardevoir, so I don't, that gets its own weirdness for the classification of a deck like that, right? Usually, you'd name it after the attacking Pokemon.
Yeah, I'd say some decks like I mentioned with like Terra Box, and I also say that for Gardevoir or like any control deck. The main Pokemon doesn't need to be the main attacker. Like Gardevoir EX is, I feel like clearly the main Pokemon in the Gardevoir EX deck.
Yeah,
Um, you can't really attack without it. Well, I mean, you can like team evolution or whatever. But you can't like attack to do big damage without Gardevoir EX, so it's still
Yeah.
the main build around, even if it's not the main attacker.
Yeah, no, that's true. I would say like Goldango obviously is really easy because if Goldango's the attacker, it's also a big part of the engine, if not the main engine itself. So that one's easy. That one's easy to classify. I haven't, I just built a festival lead deck. That one, I guess, gets a little trickier. I guess it's thwacky, but it's also not it's not the best deck in the world either. But
Yeah.
so but anyway, so your main attacker, the Pokemon that support it, um, the win more synergy. So like for Dragapult, then what's the win more synergy cards with that deck?
That'd be like Dusknoir or like Hawlucha.
Okay.
Like actually, it's pretty similar to your damage, like extra damage
Hmm.
category. Um,
Okay.
but it could be. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like other examples. I mean, certainly Monkey Dory, especially in Gardevoir, where that's
Yeah.
going to be like just extra damage. But yeah, I can't really think of. I mean, just an attacking deck, it's just going to be mostly more damage. It could be. I don't know. I can't really think of any example outside of like mill, like extra mill in a mill deck or something like that. But like if you're
Yeah.
playing Misfortune Sisters and Bug Trio, which isn't even like I can't even think of a standard example. That's how niche it is.
No, yeah, right. Or I mean, back in the day, with Snorlax, right? Black Snorlax. I guess you all those gusting cards and the milling cards. I guess those are all the win more cards in a sense with that kind of deck. I guess.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a pretty different deck though.
yeah. I mean, if you're going with a tanky Pokemon, which they're around, obviously they tend to not to underperform. They're always appealing. They're certainly appealing to me. Things that make you tankier maybe could be a win more type thing, right? So you can survive another couple turns if that's what your deck's built to do.
Yeah, it generally needs to like go with your main attacker slash main your main game plan. I guess every card in your deck should be helping you towards that, but this should be like more of the same essentially.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to deck building, and we both do some deck building. There's better people than either of us at it. Um, but knowing what you want to do with your deck, not just it is more than just I want to attack with Dragapult, but how you gonna make it set up, and what how are you gonna get the damage numbers you need in play. Having that concept for the deck is the first step. And I think it took me a little bit to learn that, right? I was just like, oh, I want to use Dragapult. So there's some Dragapults and what cards seem to go with Dragapult, but having a concept that you can you could look to kind of describe your deck in like a couple sentences, having that is kind of the foundation, which leads to, a lot of the key categories that you need cards for the deck for.
Yeah, I'd still say like literally like the first step or like step zero is like, oh, I want Dragapult, and then you need to like I'd say like build off of it, and then as you're building off of it, this is specifically building a deck from scratch because a lot of people just net deck, myself included, and yourself included. We do that some,
Yeah.
but you know, there's like some card like deck building. You have to start with one card, or it could be an idea like a combo of two cards or something. But then you need to like actually turn that into you need to like, cover up the weaknesses and accentuate the strengths. And then like I actually get set up.
Right. I mean, right. When I built my Porygon Z deck for my Team Rocket Porygon Z deck. Obviously, the cards to choose from were kind of they all mostly say Team Rocket on it, so it's kind of you have a limited card pool, which in a certain sense makes it easier trying to utilize the expanded cards to make it a little better. Um, but you need to have having a concept of what you want to do, like back in trying to create, say, an Uxie spread deck. You have the Uxie, it's a very payable attack. You're getting some damage around. Then you need some things to help, modify that, get it a little better so that, get the knockouts when you need it. So you kind of need a concept. Probably like when I built Uxie decks, I was like, okay, maybe I was looking through the cards saying, Uxie, I like that. Let me do that. When I go through like sets of cards. I usually will tag like 3 or 4 cards that are right down that I want to build decks on. But sometimes it's like, oh, I really want to build a spread deck, and then I think through what are good options for spread, and I'll go to Uxie. So sometimes I have the concept before the card. I think that could work either way. But yeah, you have to have an idea and a card, or a card which, and then understand the idea of the card. You just can't try to build do you need to have a focus with even with a card, right? How is it going to work? How are you going to get to the win condition? Not just how you get to the damage, the knockouts, but how do you win your games and close them out, right? Which is obviously you take more prizes before your opponent does, and you have to balance all that together.
Yeah, and I'd say like there are also cards that in different decks do different things. Like for example, I guess that in my opinion the two most obvious examples would be Boss's Orders and Iono. Iono,
Hmm.
you draw and you also disrupt, and it can be doing one more than the other, and it's not like doing each amazingly all the time. So I feel like some decks are going to use it more for draw. A lot of decks use it for draw. But for example, I was making a Goldengo deck, and a pretty straightforward one with Energy Search Pro before Mega Evolution, and I was like fine tuning it. I was like, Iono would be super good for disruption, but it's not very good for draw in this particular deck. Obviously, some decks, going to use it the other way. And then Boss's
Yeah.
Orders, specifically speaking, like about control, we've talked about it a lot, probably more than he gets played, but um,
Yeah.
Boss's Orders is mainly used for, well, obviously it's used for gusting, but it's used for targeting down certain Pokemon to either one, get the knockout to get enough prizes to win, or two, to slow down your opponent, removing some of their threatening Pokemon or Pokemon they need just to like kind of do stuff. But then in a control-based deck, it's going to be used as a way to get a certain Pokemon trapped in the active, um, or something along the lines of that.
Yeah, I think with understanding your deck, like thinking about say a Goldengo deck, the idea of you don't really want an Iono for disruption. Maybe you want an Iono for draw, but like a deck like Goldengo, you just want to get going, right? It's kind of a turbo deck. You from early on, you're taking big knockouts every turn, just smash, 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 and you just need to be focused on you need to set up your deck, and you're usually not trying to disrupt your opponent because you're the idea is I think Goldango is just quicker than your opponent's deck. That's how it wins, right? It's not a deck that really wants to have these turns that are kind of slow middle game type things. It just wants to whack away and
Yeah.
get the win quickly. So you got to kind of understand that concept for a deck. Whereas some decks do want an Iono to maybe draw and disrupt. So you need to understand the feel. Like say Dragapult maybe it, it potentially because it's not quite taking the knockouts all the time. It may and it's tanky, so maybe that maybe with there you can slow things down a little bit at times to get value from a disruption card as well.
Yeah, but I'd say like with Iono, like when I was thinking about it in Golding, I was thinking about it more as a disruption card, not because that's what the deck wants to be doing, but because you're not always going to be up in your game. So ultimately, you're going to need some cards that are kind of like counterbalance cards, I guess I'd almost say, where they're like, your deck has some weakness. Obviously, you want to be leaning into its strengths, but you have sometimes when things just aren't going your way, and so you want a card that's just going to be able to get you back into the game, even when that's not your main strategy. Obviously, if you commit too much to that, you're never going to be in those advantageous situations, and it's always better to be in the advantageous situation than not. Um, I mean, you could say that's not always being up on prizes, but ultimately, you need to find like the right balance, and it can be hard. Like sometimes you want to focus one more than the other, and then you might end up going too far in one direction.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I forget where I heard it from initially, but I think somebody presented kind of a multi-step thing to deck building, and one of it was you want the initial thing you want to work on is getting the deck to work to do what you want it to do, right? Getting a
Yeah.
deck to be consistent and set up, and I think that's still the biggest thing. And yes, you can start to tech things out a little bit and stuff, but you can't afford to back off the consistency too much. So you're always going to have some games that just don't set up, and you will use cards we've all been in games where bosses orders you want. It's mainly there to take the get the knockouts you want, but there's always some turns that you just bossing up something up and hoping their opponent's stuck for a couple turns because you can't do anything. But don't put a boss's order in for that reason. So like I wouldn't put an Iono in if there's better draw supporters or search supporters to help me set up, right? Usually if you want the deck to do its thing, and that gets you the wins more often than not. So, most decks the disruption is kind of secondary. It's kind of that in case of emergency break glass things, but you usually don't want to give up that deck space to make the deck work a little worse. That's kind of my thought on that.
Yeah. I'd say in terms of deck building, you tend to like decks that are more streamlined. I do like things with maybe more branching options. I'd say one thing that can be nice is going to be a card. I mean, we are talking about Iono, and it is a draw supporter in every deck, and it is disruption in every deck to some sense. It might be again a lot better at one than the other. Specifically, draw. It's probably not going to be um a bad draw supporter.
Yeah.
Unless you're like some hyper turbo deck. But ultimately, it's a card that like you can put in your deck, and even if it's like a little worse draw than say Lily's Determination, it is gonna add that disruption. So if you're looking for like a more well-rounded deck, it could be good for that. But again, you might not like get to where you want to be. It's not what everything needs, but it can lead to more um I'd say balanced games. But then those could be a lot of close
Yeah.
games that you're not winning either, which could be bad.
Well, also depending what those cards are in format, what your alternate cards are, because before Lily's Determination came out, Iona was a bigger card to me in decks.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was early game, it was the best draw for just getting raw number of cards.
Yeah.
Second to research, but research is discarding your hand, and there's a lot of decks that don't want to do that. So playing for like 3 or 4 research in a lot of decks doesn't feel good. You would play 3 or 4 Ionos in deck now. Early game, Lily's Determination is definitely better, and maybe just playing a bunch of Lily's Determination and dropping the Iono might be better because obviously late game, yes, it disrupts your opponent, but it also if you put yourself to like a one card hand and hoping, the odds are you're not going to get the piece you need either.
Yeah. Yeah, Lily's is like super good.
It is. It's yeah, one of the best supporters around, and it just gets you going so well. So yeah, I mean it changes the deck building thoughts a lot for things. So and Arvin's a huge card too. Arvin and the technical machines. I'm just looking through some deck lists, right? That combination of being able to set up, being able to go second in these decks, to evolution decks and such, and and that being the way to set yourself up. Is it's nice. It's nice that we have that in the game, right? There's times that once we lose Arvin, that's going to change deck building, and even when you go first or second with a lot of these decks, I think when that goes away, just that whole deck building card design aspect. What are your options at a certain time changes things a lot.
Yeah. Also, Arvin's kind of interesting as a supporter. Generally, what I've like said in the past, because I think was Arvin played that much when it first came out. I don't remember to be honest. It might have been. I don't remember. But um, like Arvin's obviously like a very good supporter right now. It's been for a while.
Yeah.
But before that, most of the good supporters were draw supporters. I mean, it's still true, but Arvin's a very good supporter that's search. I'd say it still functions more within the role of those draw supporters than it is in your other search cards. It's still like a supporter that's getting you search cards. Like it's you kind of want to research into like Buddy Buddy Poffin, but you also could like Arvin into Buddy Buddy Poffin. So it's more precise, a little less powerful in terms of you get 2 cards. Research gets you 7, but obviously you lose your hand with research, but uh, I think it's still in a similar role, kind of like how Pidgeot EX is in the same role as like Pheasant EX. Kind of, they're a little different, but yeah, it's definitely. I think Arvin's a pretty interesting supporter in that role.
Yeah, I mean, part of why I like to distinguish draw and search, and I get it. They're very complementary and they overlap because they are getting you the cards that you need, at least hopefully getting you cards you need. But I would say you generally want something for draw and something for search, and ideally you want them both on the same turn. Like back in the when we had the colorless Pokemon that you drew to five in hand.
Uh,
Sorry,
Shaman?
right? That's stage two. I mean
Uh,
stage one, right?
oh,
You know,
Barrel, yeah.
Barrel, yeah. Sorry, I blanket on the name there. So, but like Barrel, like having Pidgeot EX and Barrel was really good because you with Barrel you would probably get at least part of most of what you needed, and then you could finish it off with the Pidgeot EX. But without that general draw ability, the Pidgeot EX often I found you wouldn't get you get one card, but that you needed more than one card. So general draw plus specific search goes together well, I think. And then finding the right searches you need, right? Because like obviously supporter search is in some ways the better search cards, but obviously you've just burned your supporter for turn. So you got to try to figure out what's that combination. That's partly why enjoying the Mewtwo deck. I mean the Team Rocket decks, which is Mewtwo's the main one there, because of the trainer that lets you search for a supporter, and you get to play that little box style deck with a bunch of supporters. And there's a lot of turns I get the supporter that I need for that turn, which is always enjoyable.
Yeah. So do you think Arven's bad?
Um, no, I don't. I didn't like Arv when it first came out. I gotta say.
Yeah, me too.
It probably was too hard on it. Although, were the Techno Machines out when that came out? I guess they were,
Um,
right?
they weren't out immediately, but they
Okay.
were out soonish. I'm trying to like think through the timeline here. I guess I'm gonna scroll through, and this isn't gonna be helpful, is it? Oh, it lagged because there's too many decks. But yeah, most people were playing it when at least Charizard was around, which I think Techno Machines like came out right after that. Yeah, so for the most part, it was around with the Techno Machines. People are using it in different ways. People are using it a lot with Force Heal Stone. I kind of said
Oh yeah.
this is still kind of true. I feel like Arven, you want Arven in a deck with useful, like a lot of value from tools. Ideally with a bunch of tools. I mean, to me, it feels underwhelming to use Arven and not get a tool or not get any value from the tool because then you're like wasting part of the card. Getting an item still very good, but people were playing it with literally one tool sometimes, which felt disappointing to me. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
not true anymore.
No, I think all right, Arvin, you if you have like say like three different tools and then that all have value in different situations, then Arvin's really good, right? As long as you have that. And we have good items in the game too, which isn't always the case, right? There's very good Pokemon search items. We have energy search item. So with those cards, then Arvin, you can get it lets you get the pieces you need, right? There have been times that Pokemon Search hasn't been very good options for items, and obviously then Arvin would like be a lot worse in that case, even if you had great tools, or if we didn't have like Earthen Vessel, which is really good for getting your energy. All of a sudden, those times you to use your Techno Machine, you need to attach the energy, right? So you need that ability to get the energy. So you need a few cards in format at the time. The good tools are the biggest thing. Now Arvin's going to rotate with the technical machines, so we won't have that question of is Arvin any good without them. So that they're going to all go away together.
Yeah. I think some of the technical machines are, I think TM
Oh, is
Fluorite.
one sticking around?
Yeah, technical machine Fluorite's surviving, but it's like completely terrible, so it doesn't matter. And then also
Yeah.
technical machine I think is also surviving. Yep, it sure is. So you can use technical machine to search out technical machine Fluorite, and then I don't know, like quit or something. But um, yeah, that's still there.
Yeah, yeah, they do some weird stuff. Like that's right. I forgot that. And that we still what do we have? We have the tool that does more damage to um,
Jeez.
uh, V Pokemon, right? Because they reprinted that with the new regulation marks. So which obviously does is of no value at all. But they just whatever they do some odd things. So I don't know why they split out the fluorite, and particularly giving it as different regulation mark is odd. So, but it is what it is. So
Yeah. Oh, but speaking of the like, because I agree with you that you want draw and then you want search. And again, I feel like generally draw is going to be coming from supporters. It could come from draw engines as well. I say in standard that doesn't really exist to the same extent there. You mentioned Enzor, EX, that's like kind of like that.
Right.
But I had a deck idea. I actually haven't messed with this too much, but I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to kind of get the value from Arvin of getting tools. So I was like, that's kind of cool. Um, and a deck with a bunch of different tools specifically. I didn't just want to get tools for no reason. And then I still wanted to draw, like play a draw supporter, especially with lilies and like with lilies and research, you can have 8 supporters that are drawing at least 7 cards. Um, but I still wanted to get the tools, so I put in a bunch of copies of what's this name? Town Store. There we go. I know I was blanking on it,
Okay. Yeah.
but
See, yeah.
to have like a really interesting gameplay like game plan really different there. I haven't played it too much, but it's been pretty interesting. Obviously very different. I haven't really seen anyone do something quite like that. Just really leaning. I think I put 4 copies of Town Store in it to replace the 4 copies of Arvin. Obviously not the same card there. And then I put like other draw supporters, but I don't know, I just had the idea as like as pretty cool. And just like thinking about the general concepts of the function of the cards in your deck, and you can find cards that do something similar in a way that you might not think of normally.
Yeah, I mean that's part of where things get interesting, right? Trying to do other things, and of course, I called up Rotom while you're talking about tools because if you're going to play a lot of tools, right, you want to play Rotom, right? Um,
Oh, I pulled up the no, that's not Rotom.
and I haven't paid attention. We have the Mode Rotom, the Heat Rotom, the Wash Rotom, and just the basic Rotom there. So maybe
Yeah,
there you go. But you need 2 energies, and we don't really, when you got to play
yeah,
Crispin to get the energy in play. So that's not
yeah.
to do not for good stuff.
Or you could
So
use some of the tools like Power Glass or EXP Share, but there's also the new
yeah.
Rotom EX coming out in the next set, which lets you attach 2 tools to all your Rotoms. That's kind of fun.
Oh, it's for all. Now, does that count for the Rotom, the like
Yeah,
the
yeah, I
Mo
think it's
Rotom and the
everything with
Heat?
Rotom in its name.
Okay. So because with the Rotoms you have lightning, water, fire, grass, so that's nice for hitting for weakness. So kind of a fun. You just need the one the Rotom EX to double up the tools on everything, so you can get hopefully enough. It's what 30 per tool, so that's not bad. Of course, you have a deck that's got like 30 tools, and you're not going to ever set up. So, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
But there's a lot of like weird synergies, and also when you're thinking about these
Yeah.
weird synergies, you can be like, um, you kind of have an idea of like some starting point, and it kind of hops along if you're deck building. Like I had an idea that I'll talk about this deck I made. It's not super good, I'm not gonna lie, but I think it's like gotten better. I've covered it on my channel actually twice. Featuring Tortuga. Tortuga is a Pokemon that does it evolves from a fossil, which is like bad because you can't really search out fossils. You can search them out with something like Arvin, but also Arvin could just search out Nest Ball for the Pokemon itself. So it's essentially a lot harder to search out. But what it does is on a stage 1, it does 30 for each item in your opponent's discard pile. This is pretty good in terms of just raw damage. It's not absurd, but it is pretty good. And then I was like, I want to build around this, but how do I get the fossil into play? Because I
Right.
can't start it. So I was like, well, obviously, Arvin's gonna be good there, so I put that in. And then
Yep.
I also put in um the Snorlax doll and Cinderace, specifically Cinderace, because that's like better than Snorlax doll. And then from there, I was like, that allows me to potentially start essentially start the other fossil more often because I can have some control over mulligans. So that was, the idea to set this up. But then I was like, now I'm playing Cinderace. I want to get value from the attack to accelerate energies there. So
Yep.
from there, I'm gonna need some Pokemon, some like big basics. So I've this is the part that's been like messed around with a lot, but I put in some different big basics. One was like Big Kangaskhan, where you get value from the energy, and it provides some different value to the deck there. But obviously, you're not always going to start Cinderace, so I put in TM Turbo Energize, which also works with the Arvin there. And then, I kind of went on this winding path of these different synergy cards in interesting ways that, you wouldn't think of. Um, Immediately. I will say these are definitely cards. Some of them are more out there. Like one was Rotom not the not any of the rotoms you actually mentioned earlier, which is all of them except for this one. Oh no, there's fan rotom as well, which is like good.
Yeah.
But rotom, which I clicked on the wrong one. The one that discards all the items and tools in your opponent's hand, obviously useful as a disruption card, but also adds damage with the Tortuga. And then also it has another like mediocre attack. And obviously this takes a lot of card knowledge. I'm not the best player or deck builder, but I'm like certainly fine, but not amazing. But I do have a lot of card knowledge. This is something that um something that I can leverage, but everyone has their different skills in the Pokemon TCG, and I feel like if you can leverage those skills, you can make some really cool decks. Even if you're not the best deck builder, you can come up with some fun ideas.
Oh, so this is the Rotom that does for one lightning discards all items and tools in your opponent's hand.
Yeah, and then for one lightning, you could also do
Okay.
20 for each energy attached to your opponent's active. I think that's actually how I found this card. I was looking for a one energy attacker to slot into the deck, because I was finding myself coming up a little short on damage.
Yep.
But yeah, and then it ended up working.
That's an interesting one. I didn't the fact that it's items and tools because obviously tools used to be items. So this
Yeah.
is one. So they word it this way to so it does what it would have done before that ruling change. And of course, they made these rotoms are mainly 80 HP, so they're not so good in the game. With that's defined by Buddy Buddy Poffin, but that is what it is.
Yeah, funnily enough, some of the Rotoms in that Rotom box deck, or the one with the tools, some of them
Yeah,
are less than or equal to 70 HP, and some are more. So that's kind of funny. Obviously, being less than or equal, it seems like a lot better.
yeah. I mean, seeing these the HPs for the Rotom is very funny. Obviously, the Fan Rotom is the best of them. If that's what your deck wants, it is 70 HP, which is exactly what you want. It's got a nice attack and such, and a very good ability. So, and these other Rotoms, they haven't tried. It seems like they've tried to make the other Rotoms not as good as the Fan Rotom in a certain sense.
Yeah. As we've been kind of winding along here, I do also want to
Yeah,
mention with something like Fan Rotom. Obviously, Fan Rotom's good if you're playing these Pokemon, like say Noctowl, right? It's obviously meant for Noctowl. When they came out together,
yeah.
they Noctowl has exactly 100 HP. So if you're playing Noctowl, Fan Rotom's good, but you might want some more value as well. So then you could like Fan Rotom's played in a deck like it's played in different decks. Playing Noctowl, then people tend to toss in Ditto because Ditto is also going to be searchable, giving more value to your Fan Rotom. So that's like a more pure example of the idea I was going for, where you're kind of looking at your main idea for these types of decks might be Noctowl, or it might be some other attacker like Raging Bull or like Wolves from Ogerpon. But then you stumble upon Noctowl. From there, you stumble upon Fan Rotom. From there, you could stumble into Ditto. So you kind of like follow where things lead you. You're gonna find some stuff that just isn't very helpful, but you'll find some stuff that you didn't think about. Obviously, this is something that people have thought about a lot, so you could make this deck just by like finding stuff online and doing something very similar. But there's always like cool things to find with it as well.
Right, like you want to build a deck with Noctowl, and then you need it you need a Terra Pokemon. So then you start to look at those, and you probably would I would say you probably want to get a basic Terra Pokemon to make that playable, and you can look at the other the cards that people don't play as much, to try to get ideas for things. So that's kind of you pick a card like Noctowl. It might not be a Noctowl deck at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
It's a key engine piece, but that you're going to have some other attacker, and it could be a box style deck, in which case maybe it is a Noctowl deck, but you could end up with something else that's just a main attacking Pokemon. Now you're talking about Noctowl. I like that. We talked about the trainer trials with Scoop Up Net, so I think maybe that's what I need to do next is Noctowl with Scoop Up Net because obviously that makes it a whole lot better. So. And I can do that, I guess, in the trainer trials right now.
Yeah, unless it's been changed. But yeah, again, I have no idea what's happening with that. It seems super weird. But yeah. But then also sometimes you'll even be working on a deck with an idea. You'll start with an idea, and then it'll completely either change from that idea. You might not even include that original card in it, or probably more likely you would end up like getting a new deck inspiration from that by like maybe you're really interested in an idea of I'm trying to think of some like natural conclusion. I feel like it doesn't happen too much for me, but thinking about some like maybe just fan rotom, you want to like do something else with fan rotom or something like that. I don't know. Or maybe with like Wells Ogre Pontiacs toss into another deck or something like that.
Yeah, or you build yourself a an Ogerpon deck, right? Which doesn't, which isn't a bad deck. It wasn't a bad deck. I don't know how good it is, but at the moment, but you can kind of do things like that. Yeah, I'm kind of looking through like I have enjoyed the Team Rockets. Like I said, it's a very appealing thing. So I've net decked some Team Rockets, but I also kind of worked on building my own Team Rockets deck, which have those, the self-built ones generally aren't as good, but that's okay. That's kind of, it's fun trying things out. So with different concepts. So I got my annoying grass deck, which plays like Crustle and Venomoth and Badoo just to stop my opponent from playing the game. So, you get that. I'm like, hey, I got bug catching side. I really like that. So and Badoo's good. Let me just make all the stuff that nobody wants to play against, and I'll just chuck in a deck, right? That's a concept too. So, you build from that. You get a few pieces, and then you kind of start to decide what to put in and what to take out. You test it out some, and you get to either a place where the deck works, or you just probably more often than not, to me, you just kind of chuck the deck and forget about it, and move on, right? Because you realize it's not going to really ever work.
Yeah, and with that, I'd highly recommend. We're playing Pokemon TCG live, so there you have very plentiful access to cards. You don't necessarily have access to
Yep.
literally every card immediately, but it's relatively easy to get cards. So it's not like if you ditch a deck, it's bad. But I wouldn't recommend just like buying all the cards for all the decks that you just like came up with, um,
Mm.
like randomly. I'd recommend like proxying or testing them out online. But because sometimes you'll have a deck that you'll just play a tiny bit. Also another thing that I was going to say earlier, obviously we were talking about the different ways that like things that a card does in a deck, and you should think about like all the different things it does. Like Wellspring Mass Ogre Pontiacs, it's a Terra that enables the Noctowl, and obviously there's lots of cards, but this is one. So it has that role within some decks, but some decks it doesn't matter. Then it has the fact that it can be a sniping attacker, which can be useful. But you're not always going to be focusing on that, but that's probably the main thing to focus on. Then it's also a card that has trapping abilities as well. On top of that, Uncommon Fossil, you mentioned that's an ogre. Well, you didn't say this, but you mentioned the Ogerpon deck, where the fact that it's an Ogerpon matters for switching it in and out. There's just a lot of different things about every card, and these interactions and like the smaller points can matter. They don't always matter too much, but they can.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. What, right? Is it a Terra? Like, obviously, like when the Terras first came out, it didn't really matter, right? Charizard was a Terra. It changed types, but now, right? We have the state. The state. We have a little bit of support for Terras, not a lot. So all those little points matter, and trying to get the most out of them, right? And like Wells from Masquerade, like you said, it's a Terra. It's a basic. And it does multiple things. It traps and it spreads if you have it set up right. But of course, you have to build a deck that allows you to do that. Like you got to get those three energies in play. But there's ways to do it. So what decks will give you the value from it? And you have a lot. All those options. Like the Teal Mask Ogre is very good. Its ability is good, but you can also use it as an attacker depending on your deck as you could go along with things. So trying to get more than one use out of a card, helps your deck a lot because once you get to deck building, you'll find out, to me, 60 cards is tough. You want more than 60 cards pretty much all the time, with few exceptions. So getting more than one use case out of a card, just makes it that much better and helps the deck almost all the time too.
Yeah, it's useful for putting more stuff in your deck and more consistency so that you'll have that like type of piece, that like card category more often. Even if you are like sacrificing it, something like say like Kieran or like Professor Terracenero, they're both switching cards, but then they both have other utility. Like Terra has Professor Terracenero has reusing abilities sometimes in some decks can be really useful. And then it can also be used as a healing card. So if you need any of those three things, then Terracenero will do it. It's not necessarily the best option, but it's an option. And then also if you're looking for extra damage, Kieran does that in addition to switching. And so it can, as you were saying, save deck space, but it can also give you more consistency where you can say run a Tercenair and a Kieran. So now those are two switch cards, but now it's also an extra damage card. There's also you got some like um you have healing and you have all those different things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all that stuff comes together nicely. Having things like where you can have single prize versus multi-prize attackers in a deck, that's a good thing too. As I look through, those are decks I like. Like, I enjoyed the Roaring Moon decks in the past. They're not in the greatest place now, but you can play. At this point, I would play the single prize Roaring Moon, and then probably slap in the multi-prize as an option for what it does. But you get like the Pokemon, the ancient Pokemon that attacks, and then you have the ancient supporters, and it kind of you get some synergy there, and something like that. The ancient you build that with an ancient box, and then you kind of obviously you want these ancient cards. Start looking through the other ancient Pokemon, and you can kind of start taking the deck in different directions too as you get into with some other attackers, and sometimes you get wander off from the starting idea, and that can be fun as well.
Yeah, I'd say like with Ancient Box, a lot of people were. I'd actually say this is less fun. I'm not gonna lie, but people were playing it with the Koraidon, and that was I was gonna say
Yeah.
fighting. It's not fighting. It's dragon, but it uses fighting energy, as well as the Roaring Moon, which is still played. But then they were like, oh, the Koraidon is not very good. It's doing less damage. It's just kind of clunky. So they cut it for just focusing on Roaring Moon. So it's like, and the deck's like still generally called Ancient Box. I'd say it's not a toolbox deck, because there's one main attacker there, but yeah, you can like change the identity of the deck, and it slowly morphs over time to become something different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, don't. Well, in most decks, well, any deck that stays around as a good deck for all, it will significantly change over time, almost always, right? With what it is. Like, say it's rotated. It's easier with decks that have rotated because we kind of can see the full life cycle. But like Arceus decks was they've been different things at different times with what you're pairing it with. It was Arceus with some other V Maxes, then the V Stars, and you see a life cycle. Actually, well, Gardevoir is a good example now. That one's probably the best example that we have now because it was doing the damage. It wanted to get the energies attached originally, didn't like the damage on it. But now you don't really care about the energies. All you really want is the damage counters that it gets. So it's just completely changed what Gardevoir EX does over time. And that's just part of the way things work. It's also part of what makes things fun too, as the game moves, adapts what cards you have in format and what other people are doing.
Yeah. And again, that's another example where the card does different things. It accelerates energy.
Yeah.
I'd say now that's more used almost as a pivot option. Previously, it was like the main thing. And then also now people are, I say, using more Gardevoir more as an attacker than it was in the past, and just a lot of different things
Yeah.
there. Some cards lead themselves to that more than others, but even a card like Monkey Dory, obviously mainly used for its ability there. It as an attacking option has value as well. So um, overall understanding like the ins and outs of every card and the pros and cons of your cards, it can be useful to make interesting decks. That's mostly what we've been talking about. Obviously, knowing your opponent's deck as well. The more you know about your deck and the game and the metagame in general, the more you can know about your opponents and play around certain things as well.
Yeah, but in terms of if you're looking to just have fun with creativity in live, you're going to see a big variety of things. If you're going to like IRL tournaments, more substantial things, then you need something that can deal with the top decks. But if you're just looking to have some fun, like you said, live, the cards are there, they're accessible. It's essentially free to play, and you can get what you want, and you can try things out. Even with very second or third tier decks, as long as you know your deck, you can get wins out of it. And I think the whole process to me of building a deck, trying it out, refining it, it's a fun process. To me, it's not the winning and the losing and the win rate's not the fun is not the winning more games than not necessarily, but it's having a concept, building it, and trying to make the best out of it that I can.
Yeah, and actually pulling it off. Like you said this
Yeah.
earlier on a lot, that like setting up is, if you don't set up at all, you're not gonna have fun whether you win or you lose.
That's definitely true. And when I really try to build decks, it's less than 50% of the time. It's probably like 25% of the time that a deck becomes even kind of viable. If I'm just really trying ideas, like wouldn't this
Yeah.
be good? Would this be good? That's kind of where I find things to be. And that's okay. You just need some time. You need the time to put into it so you can don't mind just putting it an hour or so in and then just chucking it and saying, well, that was interesting, but let me move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and if you want it to be good, you need a lot of tweaking, and sometimes small changes, sometimes really big changes. But yeah, do you have any final words of advice here?
No, look, it's deck building. Try it out, get into it. If you haven't done it, just modify decks that you know. But don't be afraid to try things out and work on consistency first. And that's the biggest thing. And then you can go from there. If you can't make your deck do what it wants to do, it's not worth trying to worry about the matchups if you can't set up often enough.
Yeah, but we hope you enjoyed the podcast episode today. Obviously, we started more about cards in general than focus more in on deck building. But we hope you
Yep.
enjoyed and got something out of it. But make sure you, if you're watching us on YouTube, like the video and subscribe to us at 10 Types and Uncommon Fossil on YouTube. But if you want to listen to us on other podcasting platforms, you can listen to us there. But if you do have comments, make sure you leave those on YouTube because unfortunately we can't see them on other podcasting platforms. But we hope you enjoyed, and as always, we're excited to see you in the next episode.
Take care.